This is the websites.ca podcast, where we help Canadian small businesses build and maintain an effective website and online presence.
Everybody, Sean Corbett here, websites.ca marketing. We're going to talk about something interesting today. If you've ever wondered how things like reviews, Google Maps, business directories might affect your website, this is a good one to listen to. We're going to be talking to Nyagoslav Zhekov, who's the director of local search at Whitespark. And he's going to help us understand how a thing called local citations can make or break your presence on Google. So Nyagoslav, thanks a lot for being here today.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me.
So before we get too deep into it, could you give our audience just a quick definition of local search and maybe some of the main factors they need to be aware of?
Okay, so in terms of local search, it's just a major branch of search as a whole, organic search on search engines such as Google or Bing. It's the only difference is that these are searches with local intent. So the intent can be explicitly defined or can be implicit. For instance, in the early days of the search engines, you had to explicitly state that you are looking for a restaurant in a specific locality, like a city or a zip code, for instance. But later on, search engines, and of course, the first ones to do that were Google, they became smart enough to understand that if you're looking for a restaurant, especially using your mobile device, for instance, you're looking for a restaurant in the near vicinity of where you are physically located right now. So the search engine implicitly understands that your search might be with the local intent, for instance. So that constitutes a local search.
Perfect. And that's most people would be familiar with that when they see the search like such and such near me, right? Pizza parlor near me, tailor near me. Yeah. Awesome. So then with that would go, if a business has a listing, if they're appear on Google Maps, if they have reviews and so on, then all of that is going to be factored into whether or not they show up for that local search.
Yes. So there's a large area of factors that affects organic search results as a whole, and there are extra factors that affect rankings in searches with local intent or local search. So I assume most of the listeners are familiar with the general factors such as links, website content, and so on that are relevant to general organic search. In terms of local search, the main differences are that the so-called Google My Business is a very important differentiator. Then you have reviews that can be reviews both on Google Maps record or a Google My Business listing, for instance, or they can be reviews on third parties such as Yelp, Yellow Pages, and so on. And then, of course, you have the most unique factor, which is citations, so citations in their core, they just affect local search ranking factors, local search rankings, basically. So they are not a factor that affects organic search in general.
Perfect. And could you give us an example, the best example of what a local citation might be?
So a local citation is practically a mention of a business somewhere on the web. And this mention can be a complete page that is just it's just dedicated to that particular business. So, for example, like a business listing on a business directory, let's say. So that would be a page that is just dedicated to that business, or it can be just a mention on a blog post or a newspaper article or something like this. So these are both citations.
Yeah, so it encompasses quite a few things, anything that relates. Yeah. Before we get now into the nitty gritty of the topics, I was going to ask you a little bit about your background and expertise to do with local search.
So I landed in being associated with the industry completely by chance. So when I was still in college, I went on an internship in a company in Japan. The company was doing nothing related to search engine optimization, but it just so happened that they needed somebody to handle their SEO in-house, and I was under the marketing department, and they just assigned me that task, and it was mostly just reading and doing research and so on. And so yeah, that's how it started. Later on, when I went back to my native country, there was a company that it was a US company that was opening an office there. By the way, I'm from Bulgaria. Yeah, I just joined the office there. They were specifically doing local SEO. So it went from there. And that was 12 years ago.
Amazing. Okay. Yeah, you've been in this a long time. And then now with WhiteSpark, primarily, what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis to help out their clients?
So I, unfortunately, at least for myself, I rarely have opportunities to do hands-on work nowadays. We have a team of now 20 people that work on our listings-related services, and I am mostly managing that team. Even though my position is supposed to be broader than that. So we have ideas about expanding the scope of our services, but right now this is definitely and over the past like many years now, maybe 7 years, that's the service range that we have been focusing on, and that's what I'm doing on a daily basis. Basically, I'm managing this team of 20 people.
Awesome. Yeah. So what's the biggest misunderstanding when you and your team start helping a small business? What are the things that they tend to just have a misunderstanding with when it comes to local search and local citations?
So in terms of citations in particular, there are a few problems that crop up very frequently. One of them is that a lot of people especially if we work directly with businesses, because in many cases we work, for example, with agencies. But when we work with businesses, frequently we notice that businesses would have tried to do some listings on their own. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that happens is that they just went ahead. So they found some list of, let's say, business directories somewhere online, and they just went ahead and listed themselves everywhere on all of these directories, right? And the problem is that in most cases, businesses would already have some records, some listings on those business directories, right? So okay. They would have something like, for example, those records might, of course, in most of the case, they are all generated records. Maybe if we have time, we can talk more about that. But it's a little bit more complicated of how this sort of generation happens. But so when they create a new record, a new listing, and they don't edit all the existing listings, for instance, that have incorrect information, for instance, or incomplete information. That doesn't really solve the problem. So yes, they have a correct listing, and that's fine, but they also have an incorrect listing, which then confuses search engines such as Google as to what exactly is the correct information for this particular business, right? So is it that other listing that might feature the owner's mobile phone number, or is it the new listing that features the landline or something like this? So another thing that we get in terms of questions very frequently is related to this misconception that citations are very similar or work in a very similar manner to links. So in particular, people read, of course, articles about SEO, and they read about links, and they realize that links are a quick win, basically. So you get a few good links on high quality websites and so on, and within a few days you can actually bump up the rankings of your website in organic search. Citations, unfortunately, don't work the same way. So they don't work in near instant capacity in terms of their capability to improve rankings. Google has this system where they add new clusters of information to their maps database on in certain intervals of time, right? So these intervals can be every month and a half or 2 months or something like this. And only if during this interval of a month and a half or 2 months, they have found the corresponding citation and they have actually associated it with a so-called cluster that they have for a particular business, only then this would affect the rankings of the business. So this means that you may get a citation on a very good quality website, like for example, Yellow Pages today, but this citation may not have any effect whatsoever on your rankings until potentially 3 or 4 months later, for instance. So this is pretty common.
Got it. Okay. Right. So people have to have some patience as well. It's not an overnight fix.
Yes, it takes months usually.
Yeah. And you mentioned too that there's that thought that citations and links in a lot of people's minds are very similar. And then you also gave the example of getting a link on a really high ranking authoritative website. Does that apply to citations? In other words, do people want to avoid being on, say, a crappy, poorly formatted, not updated business directory as opposed to going to the best business directories, or does it not really matter for citations?
It certainly matters. So, okay. There are two issues here, or two related topics. The first one is that even though citations don't act directly as the same way how links affect rankings, citations, of course, for example, a listing on a business directory might feature a link to the business's website, which means that if you get a link from a poor quality website, business directory, for instance, to your own business website, that might have a negative effect on your rankings, for instance, right? So this is one way how this works. Another thing is that so there is a patent from the mid 2000s that was granted to Google. It's related to local search. It's related to the short term is location prominence. And in that patent and another patent that is also related, what is mentioned is that one of the factors that, these are secondary factors that Google looks into when they look into the web document from where the citation comes, is the actual authority of the domain on which this web document is found. So in this regard, although a citation per se, so the citation itself without an actual do-follow backlink to the business's website would not have a negative effect on your rankings, even if it's on a low-quality business directory, for instance. It would have a very minimal impact, even way down the road. For instance, I mentioned citations work with a lag.
So the implication of that be that people should just be getting as many citations as they possibly can?
Not as many, because again, the ROI is diminishing as you go down the quality. But yes, in general, it would be good if you are more robust with citations and you can be more free to you can feel safer to go down this road rather as compared to when you work with links, where of course if you go to low quality sites, then you may actually indeed be penalized and so on.
Okay, great. That really clarifies it. Thank you. Now, again, I don't want to move on until we've hammered that point home in the audience's mind, is that what he's saying is getting citations is good, but you have to check first if you already have them. So you don't want to listen to this and just jump out there and go start slamming as many business listing citations as you can without making sure that, there's an existing one out there. You want to make sure that the information is the same from listing to listing, right? So there's some consistency and everything's up to date and all that kind of stuff. Now, with that in mind, could we tell our audience what are a few easy wins that a small business could basically do tomorrow to help improve their local search presence?
Okay, so the most important thing would be to just square away. So exactly what we're talking just now. You just square away your most important sites, right? So you just do that as the very basis of your strategy, and it's not so. I know that there are a lot of business owners. They like to go around and they want to check what are the general citation sources out there, and they see a huge list of sometimes hundreds of sources, for instance, or they sometimes even use some of our software to check on that, and they get scared, right? So they are like overwhelmed by the sheer amount of business directories that are out there, and they're like, okay, there's no way that I can do that. Again, you don't need to go through all of those hundreds of business directories. You just need to go through the top 5, for instance, for your corresponding country. So if you are from the US, let's say, you have a few data aggregators like Localese and Infogroup that you need to hit. And then you need to go through Yellow Pages and Yelp, for instance, besides of course, the search engines such as Google Maps, Bing Maps, and Apple Maps. And if you're from Canada, you actually also have Infogroup in Canada, but of course the big one there is Yellow Pages Canada, which can be trickier sometimes to get right. So, but it is worth spending the time to actually getting your YP Canada listing properly done.
So you can update your Yellow Pages listing without having to pay anything, or do you have to pay to get that updated?
So it depends. Are you talking about Yellow Pages Canada?
Yellow Pages Canada, yeah.
So it depends. Yellow Pages Canada obtains information from a number of sources, including from phone registers, for instance. So it's the best thing that you can do is actually contact them and try to figure out where, especially if there is some incorrect, outdated information out there for you, just to figure out where they are getting that information from, and fixing the source of the information very frequently that's actually better, especially in the long run, than trying to fix in any way the listing itself on Yellow Pages Canada. Like, for example, in many cases they require an extra payment. So fixing the source would actually fix the listing itself after a while, usually. But the more important thing is that if you don't fix the source, even if you fix the listing, even if you pay to fix the listing, if the source remains incorrect, then you have a problem down the road. Like, for example, a listing with that incorrect information might pop up an incorrect duplicate, for example.
Right. So people need to understand that the source is basically all these other aggregators are pulling information from the source. So it's best to fix that first.
Yes. It's so in Canada. In Canada, it's usually easier to do that than, for example, in the US. In the US, there are a lot of complications because there are a lot of agencies that you might need to hit, like government agencies, and and tracking the source is a little bit more complicated there in general. Yes.
Got it. Okay. Well, we found something where it's easier in Canada. That's a rare occurrence. So then. I was also going to ask you what your opinion on this is. A lot of times when our customers will come to us with these types of questions, right? And we don't totally help with all this kind of stuff. That's why I'm glad you're on here today. But sometimes we'll just recommend that as a first step, they just sit down and they Google their company name and see what comes up. Obviously, their websites should come up, and if they have social media and whatnot. But it's sometimes interesting to see what comes up on the first 2 pages, because there you can identify a few of the business directories that might list you that you didn't even know you were in. Would you say that's a pretty good step to take?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the simplest thing that anyone can do, of course, and they can do that for free, obviously. Another thing that a business can do is there's a service called Yext. And I have written extensively on the service, and we can probably talk if we have time on that. But the most important thing about Yext is that they have this scanner, and for example, a business can just use for free that scanner of Yext, and they actually go through the sites that are in Yext's network, for instance, and they basically discover any existing listings on those sites. Of course, there are some caveats, like they don't always find those listings, or they just find one listing per website. But it's still a good way to do a quick scan on your business listings.
Oh, perfect. Okay, and that's yext.com.
Yes, YEXT. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So people should definitely check that out. I was going to ask you about maybe you could just tell us a story about a specific time that you helped a business, what their problem was, and how you and the White Spark team were able to solve it.
Okay, so this is probably related to Yext, because this is something that we see very frequently. So a while ago, that was a few years ago, we discovered that with so there are two types of listings management related services. One of them is, of course, the manual approach, and the other one is an automated approach. And so with the automated approach, there exists this problem that so with manual listings management, usually you don't have to pay a recurrent monthly or yearly fee, for instance. So it's once and done type of job, and citations in general are a once and done type of job, right? So you go to this website, you list yourself, and you're pretty much done, unless you change your business address or rebrand your business, for instance, down the road. But other than that, you don't really have to do a lot of ongoing management for your listings. So, however, the way how most automated listings management services are set up is that you have this recurring fee, and when you cancel the service, frequently for reasons that are beyond the scope right now, your listings might disappear, or they might revert back. For example, if the service actually edited an existing incorrect listing, that listing might revert back to the incorrect state in which it was before you signed up for that service. So especially nowadays, we frequently get clients that have been subscribed to such type of an automated service. They decided that they don't want this ongoing expense. I'm saying nowadays because that happened especially during the pandemic, and they just want to get rid of this ongoing cost, and they want to switch to something else. So they turn off their subscription in the beginning, and they think that that's done, right? So they don't have anything else to do, and then they discover that some of their listings have, for example, disappeared. So this is something we frequently help with, for instance, and this is something that businesses should look out for. So it's not necessary that every service that you get gets you permanent listings, for instance.
So they came to you before they had canceled their current service, just as a precaution, or they had noticed after they canceled that a bunch of listings disappeared?
Yeah, most of the time is the latter. So most of the time, okay, they discover that only after they have canceled the service. Of course, when you cancel those services, they don't usually explicitly mention that you may lose some of your listings, for instance.
Got it. And was there ever an instance of a company that you saw where it wasn't so much they were looking to get incredible traffic and great results from their local SEO? It's maybe that it was done and set up so incorrectly in the past that it was hurting them, and they just wanted to make that pain go away. Is that something that happens?
Oh yes, of course, all the time. But so the thing is, again, because citations are generally very weakly understood, I would say a lot of search-related ranking factors are not understood very well in general, even by companies that specialize in the field. But citations are especially misunderstood. So it's not common that businesses would come to us and would say, okay, I have this problem and I just wanted to, like, for example, I have problems with my citations because they were set up incorrectly and so on, and I just want to fix it because it's hurting my rankings. This relationship between hurt rankings and something being set up incorrectly is usually not there, right? So there are most of the time when businesses come to us, they are like, okay, I have my rankings have tanked and I don't really know why, and can you help me to figure it out? And in some cases, yes, there have been problems, in particular with citations. Like, for example, there are this happens especially with service-based businesses. So clients would have been working with an agency, and that agency was thinking that it would be a good idea to actually get them listed in all the local areas that they service. So, for example, if you have a city like Chicago that has tens or hundreds of suburb areas, right? So what this agency would do is they would go and set up listings for that business, separate listings for each of the suburbs, right? Thinking that this is a good idea. And then the business would end up with like 20 or 30 listings that are completely rogue. And in some cases, for some business directories, they might be able to skip, for example, the business address. In our case, where they are unable to, they would use a fake address or a PO box or some virtual office or something like this. And that's usually expensive, what those agencies do, and later on it takes a substantial amount of time to actually fix.
Right. So people should be aware that if it sounds like a shortcut or a hack, it's probably a long cut into your business.
Most certainly, yes.
Yeah. It actually reminds me when we were first starting out, also many, many, many years ago, and a person asked if we could make him 5 copies of his existing website on all different domains. And we tried to explain, it's not really going to help. It's probably going to hurt you. No, I insist. So yeah, that's funny.
Okay.
Citation for every suburb. That's great. So for the people out there who, I think you made a pretty compelling case here, right? That of course, there's lots of steps people can take to do on their own, but there are pitfalls. You have to understand what you're doing. You have to be able to look for old stuff and correct stuff, know how to fix it. You don't want to go with some fly-by-night company. So, if somebody needs help with this sort of thing, what's the process with WhiteSpark, and how would they go about getting in touch with you and starting?
So the easiest way to get started, we have this page on our website, and anyone can just select the package that they're interested in, and they can go from there. Usually what I suggest is what we talked about earlier, was that especially if you are in a not so competitive industry, it's not necessary that you go with many citations, right? So there is this diminishing return on your investment, where if you go down the list after the 100th website or something like this, it doesn't make a big difference anyway. And especially if you are in an industry like most of the contractors in Canada are not really that competitive, except for probably in Toronto, for instance. So you can go with like 20 or 30 citations, for instance. That would be perfectly sufficient. But if you are in an industry like I always like to give as an example personal injury lawyers in different cities in California, in the US. That's one of the most aggressive industries out there, where the competition is vicious. So you really want to go for as much as you can get. But these are rather exceptions from the rule, and for most industries it would be like 20 or 30 citations would be sufficient for sure.
So will your staff do a sort of introductory assessment to be able to help these businesses and say, look, this is what you need, or maybe these are some existing problems, and go from there?
So yeah, of course, if a business contacts us directly and asks us for an assessment and for advice on what kind of package they might that might be more suitable for their situation. Yes, we definitely do that. So this order page that I mentioned to you, the service page, is just a straight up order page, so you can just place your order directly there. But if you're unsure, you can definitely contact us, and we'll definitely assess your situation.
That's awesome. Yeah, and should they email you directly then, or is there a general email?
Yeah, so anyone can email me directly. My email is Nyagoslav, that's NYAGOSLAV @whitespark.ca.
Thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
If you're not satisfied with your current website or the service you get from your provider, you can switch to websites.ca for free and get a great support team behind you. Just visit business.websites.ca. That's BUSINESS.websites.ca, or email Ryan directly at RYAN@websites.ca.
Thanks for listening, guys. Catch you next time.